So it should have just popped up and told you that it was recording. All right. And it should only record what I'm going to show you guys. So you don't have to worry about your faces being on camera the whole time because I'm on present mode. I know that was something that we said this morning because we didn't want our faces to be on the camera. All right. So there are some links and things we're going to go through today. Main thing is that if you want to follow along with my slides or have those for reference after the session, the link is in the chat. It's also on the document where all of our Zoom Google training is going to be offered, so you have access to that and can look at these at any point in time. I did put a lot in these slides just because I wanted to put resources there for you to look through on your own, and I didn't know how many questions and points we'd have where we'd stop and play around in the session. So I don't know if we'll get through everything, but it's there for you if you want to look through it. If you have any questions during this training or you want me to pause or something, just let me know and you can say something in the chat. Nick and I are both in here to kind of help each other co-present now that we don't have a meeting at the same time that we scheduled this. And let me know if you want any examples or copies of some of the sample forms that I show you in this presentation, and I can always send those your way so you can edit them. So goals for this session is to learn the different ways that you can use Google Forms in the classroom. We'll see if it slowly brings up. There we go. So you can use them to support universal design for learning in your classroom. We'll practice looking at some of the more advanced form settings. So a lot of people think of forms as just being a survey tool, but there's really a lot more to it than that. You can use it for quizzes. It can be set up to where it can automatically grade quizzes, which really takes a lot of time off your plate. And if there's any way we can do that as teachers, we always want to take advantage of those opportunities. You can always use forms for reflection. So just looking at some of the different ways you can use it that might be more creative than just a typical survey tool. So a couple of things to get started, just some forms basics, and chances are at some point in time you have filled out a form. As a staff member in BCS, because we use this feature quite a bit. You probably got one a few days ago asking about planning on coming back to work and what that might look like for e-learning or virtual learning or whatever classroom instruction looks like for the next school year. So you probably have some experience with forms there. But just a couple of things and ways that teachers have used forms. Forms is the survey collection tool within Google for Education or G Suite. Those are kind of used interchangeably. You can use it for lots of different ways. Sign-up sheets, checking for understanding or formative assessments in a lesson, a quick poll or survey of your students, lesson plans, quizzes, checklists, reflections during a project or at the end of a lesson, project work logs, creative ways of using them. These are a little bit more advanced, but using them for creating a branching form, which if you've ever seen the choose your own adventure stories that were kind of popular in the 80s and 90s, it's kind of a digital play on that. And you can use forms for breakout rooms and escape rooms and even more than just those. So to start off, I am going to have you kind of experience a Google form yourself so I can show you some of the different question types and things that are out there. So there is a short link that's on your screen. So if you want to pull it up in another tab, that would be fantastic. You could just fill out some of those questions and kind of experience a form firsthand. And we're going to look at some of the different question types and how I built that form, and then we'll move into some additional forms examples. So if you have my slides pulled up, if you click, it's linked there. Otherwise, if you type in this bit.ly sample 616, it should bring up a Google form. It looks like this.
Yes, I got it.
Binoculars and stuff. Awesome. If you just take a few minutes to fill that out, that would be fantastic.
I'm done.
All right.
Oh, you're done.
Okay. So just a couple of short questions there. I would like to be here. I don't know about you guys, but that looks pretty nice to me. All right. So just wanted to give you some experience there looking at a form so you can experience that firsthand and kind of see if you use this in the classroom, what your students would see. And as you saw, there were a couple of different question types in this form. I didn't use all of them, but I showed you some examples. So first one being a short answer and then a multiple choice. So multiple choice, you can only select one answer. And then I also wanted to show you an example of where you can add different pieces of multimedia to a question on a Google form. So with that being said, simple things to know when you're navigating a Google form is just that top panel is your navigation bar, and that's really where you can have some control over the way your form looks. You can preview it so you can see what it looks like before your students are sent this form if you're using it with your students. You can configure some of the form settings, so determine the number of times a student could take a Google form, what message they see after they submit it, and if you want to set it up as a quiz where it automatically grades the questions itself. You have your send options and then additional settings options here. So that top panel on a Google form is really where all of your admin controls and settings are, and you can even organize it here, move it into a specific folder in your Google Drive. I know that you both were in the Google Drive training this morning, so you got some practice making folders and navigating, and you could move this to a specific one. I'm very bad about not putting forms where I need them to be, so I recommend doing that right after you name the form, is put it somewhere where it's a little bit more organized so your drive doesn't end up a little bit chaotic like mine is. All right, so other things to know here is that when you're building the form, there are some settings that kind of go along as you add content to the form. So if I added a question, it automatically puts one there for you right from the get-go, and it always puts it at multiple choice. This drop-down menu is where you can change that and select different types of questions. There's all different kinds there, but this sidebar here is also helpful. So if you want to add more questions, if you want to reuse a question, and this is a nice one if you use similar forms over and over and over again. I know that when I was in the classroom, I like to use forms and to help my students reflect on different points in a project. And sometimes I didn't want to have to type that question over again. So if you use this reuse question, it pulls from another Google form. You can select which Google form in your drive and not have to type out that question again. I didn't know that when I was in the classroom, and that would have saved me so much time. So that's an effective one if you want to cut down on typing. Adding a title and description, you can put that before or after a question, really anywhere you want in a form, but what it essentially does is just gives you a little bit of space to type out information for your students. So maybe specific instructions. If you're using a form as a way for students to reflect on a project, maybe you're giving them some guidance on what they're reflecting on, or if you're using a form to do a virtual lesson and all of your lesson materials are on that Google form, you could type out the goal, the lesson instructions using that title and description, because you don't have a character limit on the description, so it can be pretty lengthy if you need it to be. Adding an image, you saw that on the question that I showed you, so you can add an image either above a question or add it within the question itself, or even as a part of the answer options. I'll show you an example of that here in a few minutes. You can add in YouTube videos or any video that you have saved on your device. So if you have a video saved in your Google Drive, or if you have a video saved on your device, you can upload it to Google Drive and then put that in your form. So I know that there were a few teachers during e-learning that really liked using forms, and they still wanted to give students a video component. So they would put the YouTube video within the form and then the questions that the students would answer from the video after that. And then page break just breaks up, it's actually called adding a section on a form, but what that does is it breaks up your form so that if it is a test or you need to have your form set up to where they can't see all of the questions as soon as they open it, this is a way of kind of chunking those questions, that information in a smaller bit. So if I were to add a section into this form, maybe I only wanted you to see where you put your name, your first name and last name, and then after you click a next button is where you see the actual questions about vacations and travel. So it just kind of makes it a little bit more manageable. Questions about any of that?
No, that's fine.
All right. So formatting, how to make it look all fun and pretty. That's across the top toolbar as well. And I'm just going to go over here and show you within the form itself. And this is where you can customize your theme. So there's basic colors here. You can select through a bunch of them. But what I did here was I selected from, I added an image. And this is not a picture that I had taken. There are ones that are already loaded within Google Forms that Google put out there. And there's all kinds of them there. And some of them actually have a little bit of animation to them. And you can upload them from your device if you want to. So some of the ones that the district creates, they upload the BCSC logo. So if you want to make it custom to what you're doing for your class that day, you can add it there. Or from Google Photos if you have the Google Photos installed or a part of your Google account. You have some options there. And you can even change the font style. There's not a ton of options, but there are a few if you want to change that up as well. I usually just stick with the basic one, but you can make it look fancy if you need to. And it changes the font in all the places on the form. So not just the title, but everywhere.
I'm sorry, could you please just let us know one more time? Where
Yeah.
do we use the fonts?
So it is right over here. So if I clicked the customize theme,
Oh, got it. Okay.
yep, it's a little bit further down the page here. So I could change that to that font, or I want it to be in cursive, you can change it there.
Okay, got it.
Yep, so you have some options. 4 options to be exact.
Yes.
Not a ton. All right, still looking at that top toolbar before we dive into all the different question types. The settings on a form are pretty key as well. And that's just that little cog beside the send button on a form. So if you're the one who made it, it's gonna be right here. And there's 3 tabs to know within the settings here. So general is settings for your form that determine if it's collecting information like the person's email address and how many times they can take the form. So I will just warn you that if you collect email addresses or if you limit to 1 response, it gives you a little bit more control on the form, but it does require someone to sign in with a Google account to take the form, which isn't an issue when you use this with students because they all have their BCSC Google account, no problem there. But maybe if you're sending a form out to the community or parents, they might not all have Google accounts. So just know that before you go into it, that if you select those options, that it will require them to sign in. So you probably won't have to worry about that a whole lot with students though.
If I have to send any Google form to all my 4 classes, so how do I do that?
That is going to be in the send button. And you have a couple ways you can send that. Technically, you could do it by email. I never used that because with you guys, you're secondary teachers too. I was a middle school teacher. I don't have to type in every kid's email. That would take forever in a day.
Yeah.
So within the send button, there's where you have some options. I like to just do the link. And I always shorten it, just easier for me to see that I copied it.
Got it.
If I click copy, copies it to my clipboard. I see a little notification here in the bottom left. Do it again so you can see it. And then I can just put that in a message to my students on It's Learning, or I can put it in a content block. I can put it in my assignment on It's Learning and send it out to them anyway, and they have access. The other option is to embed it. This is an option, but also my experience using the embed tool with It's Learning is that sometimes it made it to where it was very narrow on the screen and it was just hard to read, or the students had to scroll within the text box on It's Learning, which I didn't necessarily like, but I was very particular about the way things looked. I know some people like to embed, but I just liked using the link, so then it just opens in another tab when my students click it, so they still have my It's Learning course and they have this pulled up.
Okay.
That was personal preference.
That is fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Other things to know in settings, if you want them to be able to edit, students to be able to edit their response after they submit, maybe they forgot something and they want to go back, you can select that to be turned on. Summary of charts and text responses. This means that after someone submits their responses on a form, they see graphs of what other people have said. And they only see that after they finish the whole form.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't probably used super often. The next tab within settings is presentation. Progress bar. This is helpful if you have lots of questions on your form. Maybe it's a test, just so students see how many more they have to go. I just always like to turn that on because if I'm taking a survey or something, I want to know how much time I'm investing on that. So it's helpful to have that on, and that's just my personal opinion. I just think it's kind of a neat feature to have. If you do shuffle question order, that's another option here. This is great for an assessment if you want to use that. But just know that if you do the shuffle question order, if your first question on your test is for students to enter their name, it's and their first name, and then the second question is to enter their last name. If you do shuffle, yeah, it's gonna mess those up. I learned that the hard way one time. I thought I was being really tech savvy and cool and using Google Forms and shuffled my questions, and then my students were like, why was our name jumbled all in your test? So the way to avoid that is, if you want to shuffle the question order, put the question that has their name, the first question, and then put all the rest of them in a section. So if I set this up to where there was a section below this, and that's just this little add section button, now if I shuffle the questions, it won't impact this one. It'll just shuffle these content type of questions there.
So just say again, I got really confused.
Yeah, so if I want to shuffle my questions, and maybe this is a test and I don't want all of their screens to look the same, have my name question here. And then what I did is over here on this right toolbar, the bottom one is add section. So I clicked that. And what that does is it added this little content block here.
Okay.
So I can give this a name. So this can actually be the test questions. I can type out instructions there. Yep. And then what I would do, hide that bigger. Yeah, you don't even have to give this a title, by the way. It will just show this little section 2 when the students get to that. So in my settings now, if I shuffle the question order, it will only shuffle those ones. It won't jumble the whole test. Then you want to have a personalized message here. Maybe it has information for the students to do the next step in your lesson. You can type that out here, and this is the message students see when they turn in their work, when they turn in the form. And then quizzes this is how you set it up to where it can be automatically grading. So that's a little bit more advanced of a form, but what you can do in this is essentially assign point values to questions and set up a rubric, or really how it grades it as well. This feature here, locked mode on Chromebooks, I don't recommend this for high school teachers because this only works on Chromebooks, and not all of your students have Chromebooks. So at some point when we keep giving freshmen Chromebooks in a few years, everyone will have them, and then you can use this feature no problem. But in the meantime, this would not. Yeah, and what this does is it just locks down the device so they can't open other tabs while they're taking a test. So here are some of those settings for giving feedback if you're using this as a quiz. So you can give it to them immediately after they submit it. They get a whole detailed breakdown of how they did on the quiz. Or you can do this later, but you turn on later after manual review. That does mean that when students take the test, right before they even finish taking it, they'll have to enter their email address, which isn't a problem because all of them have the BCSC email. It's their BCSC Google account. And then what you would do is you provide feedback to them later, and it would just send them an email automatically with the comments. I usually, if I was doing an auto grading on a test, I just did immediately, so then it was done and they knew exactly how they did. But I know some teachers do the manual review and like that. So it's just
How do we see their grades though?
it will be when you set up the questions. It'll be in the responses afterwards.
Okay.
And you even have some more local control here on what they can see for incorrect or correct answers. So they can see which ones they missed. If you set it up to where it's maybe a multiple choice question, they can see what the correct answer is. You don't have to have that turned on. And you can show them point values for a question too.
Where did you get this logged mode in Chromebooks? This, I mean, like the screen one under the quiz option. I don't get it.
You have to turn on, make this a quiz.
I turn on, but it underneath that is quiz option and then release grades. But I can't see this turn on the lock mode or something like that. Yes,
Oh.
I cannot see this whole bar.
Hmm.
Are you using the Chromebook right now?
I'm not using a Chromebook. I'm using a Windows device.
Yeah, I'm using the Dell laptop, but I can't see that.
Huh.
I don't know.
If
Yeah, I have opened
the setting we have turned on or off.
Yeah, make this quiz.
Or if it's a version.
It could be.
Probably. Yes. No, I cannot. I can't see that. The screen thing, which underneath the quiz option, you have this, but I can't see that in my another laptop, like my home Dell laptop.
Okay.
Mine is fine. Same to you.
Probably it could work on a school laptop then.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it might be the newest version of Chrome.
Mine is
Yes.
probably different version. Mine is a high laptop.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
I just had to update mine recently, so.
I don't think any of our computers have done any updates whatsoever since pandemic.
I manually updated mine because I had
Yeah.
I had to use a feature when I was presenting on a webinar and was like, oh, I don't have that. Probably should figure that out before. Yeah, I will look into that and double check that that's possibly what's going on. But that is just some generals there on the settings in quiz mode. And I'm going to go into more details on quiz mode here a little bit later. All right. And as usual, I make the slides and I abandon them within minutes. And now I forgot where it was. All right. Different question types. So the sample form that you all looked at had a couple of question types, but there's definitely a lot more. And these are just some of the different tips if you're using those different question types. Short answer, there is a character limit at some point in time with that. So just know that if you're using short answer on a Google form, it's not meant to be for paragraphs and paragraphs of text. That's what that second option is right here, the paragraph. Multiple choice, you can only pick one answer. Checkboxes is you can pick multiple answers. So if you want students to have one of those questions where there's more than one answer possible, then a checkbox is the way to go. And then drop down, similar to multiple choice, in that you can only pick one answer there. The file upload question type allows students to upload a file as their answer to the question. So this is actually what Corey Williams set up a form for all of our graduating seniors where they uploaded pictures, and that's the question type that she used. They uploaded pictures and documents to her so they could put them in that little end of the year slideshow for our graduates. So that's an example there of how we have used that. Other question types, linear scale. This is a good one if you want students to rank maybe their understanding in a lesson. I used kind of a scale of, did you understand the topic, on a scale of 1 to 4 in class all the time, a 1 being that my students needed help, a 4 being that they understood it so well they could teach it to someone else. So that is the question type I used frequently with my students, and it was just really easy to get some data from them using that question when they filled out a form. Multiple choice grid, they can only pick one answer per line. This one is fantastic for rubrics. So if you want to automate your rubric process, instead of marking it all on paper, keeping it digital, just because it might be more efficient for you to do that. Maybe you're watching students present and you have the rubric pulled up on your device. I'll show you that example of that here in a second. That is the way that I've felt like I've seen people use that feature before, unless Nick has another idea of how to use that. But that's, in my experience, I use the multiple choice grid for rubrics for my students while they were presenting projects. And then checkbox grid is where you can select multiple answers. So it's just a more visual way to give students lots of different options to assess. And then date and time as well. That's more for scheduling purposes. You can enter a date or a time. So here's an example of the multiple choice grid, good for rubrics. So this is a medical based one, but if I set this up for my class, this could be the different criteria that I'm scoring them on for their projects. And then as I go through, I can only pick one per row here. So they did great, excellent. Maybe they need some more work, neutral. So this is an example of using the multiple choice grid for a rubric. All right, other features within questions. You can add multimedia within questions, as you guys saw from that sample one. You can add pictures into a Google Forms question, and you can even add pictures within the answer option. So I'm going to show you an example of one. So this is an example of a form that can be used for a project reflection or a lesson reflection. And this is adding in pictures as an answer option. So I've seen lots of teachers use this to help students who maybe they're learning new vocabulary, or you just want to give them that visual support to go along with the text.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an example of that. And all that I didn't have all of those saved on my computer. So to add in those pictures, loading still, there we go. I set this up as a multiple choice question, and delete that picture here for a second. But if I wanted to add in the picture, I'm kind of hovering over where I typed out that response, add image, I can upload it if I have it saved. I could take a picture if I wanted to, which would be my webcam right now. So that could be kind of entertaining, I suppose. I can pull from the internet, my Google Photos, Google Drive, or a Google image search. Add in a picture right there. Oh, that one doesn't like that picture, but I can add in picture there. If I want it to be a part of the question itself, like the one I showed you earlier, I just hover here where the question text is and add the picture there. That is an option for adding multimedia. Other multimedia you can add is the video. So if I want to add a video to go with this question, it's just that right toolbar over here. So I can search within YouTube, or if I have a URL from somewhere else on the internet, I could just paste it there and it'll show it, and then I can add it. Select. So maybe it's a video of me explaining the lesson instructions for the day. Maybe I made a screencastify. I could put that video before my students get to the questions. I think, yep, that was my next slide. Got ahead of myself again. All right, other things to know, settings for individual questions. If you want to make sure people answer the questions that you want them to, make sure you toggle on required. And there actually is a way that every time you make a Google form, it will make all the questions required. So I turned that on because I was really bad about forgetting to turn on questions as all being required. I always have to toggle that on myself. So if you want every question to automatically be required, and then if you change it, you have the ability to do that. It's this 3-dot button here in the corner, and it's preferences. And then I turn this on so that every time I make a form, all of my questions are required and I don't forget. Because there were many times when I sent out a form to students and they skipped over a question that I really needed them to answer. So that's what I did there to kind of help with that. And that was just in that 3-dot menu beside my profile picture and preferences. Right. Other settings, if you need to duplicate a question, you can copy it here. Additional settings is that 3-dot function button beside required. Description allows you to add maybe guidance or instructions to students or a hint on how to answer the question. It's just a little short section where you can add text. And then these other options here, you can shuffle the question order, or you can go to a different section based on an answer. So this is where we kind of get into some of the advanced options with forms that where you can give students different pathways on a form based on how they answer questions. So that's kind of a fun way to use forms in an advanced way. It does take a little bit of planning up front, but I'll show you an example of what that looks like, and you can kind of experience answering a form in that format. So those are the basic question settings. Questions on that?
No.
All right.
No.
Doing good. Okay, previewing a form. If you want to see what it looks like for a student before you send it out to them, I always like to preview it and actually go through answering the questions myself. On a form, it's that little I button beside the settings and where you picked your colors for your theme. And then sending a form, we already went over that, but that is the send button, and then the link button is probably your best option, but you could also embed it if you need to on its learning. So you send out the form, students are filling it out. How can I see how they responded? So that is the second tab here. So I have my questions where I built my form, responses where I can see what people said. So you have quite a few options here. Google is fantastic and automatically makes some pretty charts and things for you. And what's pretty cool is that you can copy this chart, and then I can even put it in a slide if I want to. I can also put it in a doc. It does take it a second, but there we go. So if you don't want to have to mess with spreadsheets, making your own charts that way, you can copy ones directly from your form wherever you need to. So maybe if you're having a conversation with students after a test and they missed a question or they did really well on one, then you can show them the graph on how the class performed and then kind of have that conversation with them afterwards.
That is the entire class, right? Can
Yes.
we see individual, like, for example, number 8, mostly student got it wrong. We got feedback, we need a reteach.
Yeah, that's where you could show them a graph and kind of have that conversation. And even if you hover over this, it tells you the number of people who responded to that. So if we had someone who'd marked yes, it would, if I hovered over this graph, it would tell me the number of people who had that response versus who marked no. So this summary here shows you all of the responses and just that general snapshot of everyone who looked at it, and you can see the responses there. If I want to see how a specific student did, if I go over here to individual, this is where I can look at how individual participants answered the form. And I can see their responses. So that's where you can really dig deep and see how individual students did and get an idea there, and you can print those too. And there's an arrow here, so if I want to go to the next student, that's how I navigate to the next one, and so on. If instead of looking at individual students, I want to look at the individual questions, I'll click questions. And then here's where I can select the question that I want to look at. So this kind of lends it to what you were wanting to see. Oh, we didn't do so well on question 8. This is where you could see on how students did on that question too. So individual question data. This is good if you have a really multiple questions.
Well, that's more clear than Go format.
Yes.
Good.
So that is just your basic settings there. Now, if you want to be able to see this in a different way, Google Forms link automatically with Google Spreadsheets, which are called Google Sheets. And to create a spreadsheet that is linked with this form and automatically gets all of the responses as students continue to enter them, I can click here, create spreadsheet. and then it will automatically name that spreadsheet with the name of my form followed by responses. So I click create, and it takes it a second,
Oh, wow.
and there it is. So if
Excellent.
you like more of the spreadsheet view, you have that option here with forms.
Mhm.
And filter things if you need to. So I won't spend tons of time on sheets because that can be its own session. But if I want to, I didn't select it.
I would note that if you can turn off your form so that it doesn't accept any other responses. But if it's still taking responses, what is it? It puts them on the bottom.
Yes.
So if you're manipulating the data, it's just going to shove new answers in on the last row in your spreadsheet. But that spreadsheet, kind of update as it goes, and you can put in formulas up above, like Brenny has the filters in row 1. You can add a row above it and add formulas if you're messing with some of that statistics. And then once you turn off the form, then you can have your way with it.
And what I've done before and what I've seen teachers do is they maybe have one form for all 5 class periods if they teach chemistry or something like that. And what they do is they add tabs across the bottom, and it pulls the different individual class periods into those tabs, so they can kind of get a specific snapshot and kind of manipulate the info for that one class in its own separate tab. That's the cool thing with forms, is that it links really well with Google Sheets. And if I wanted to go back to my form, maybe I forgot to keep that tab open in Sheets. If I go to form and then go to live form, that's where I can go and see my form again. But I already have that open, so that's what it can take you back to. I need to move my controls so where they're not across the top of my screen. There we go. So that is how you can get back to your form too. If I just click that again, now that I've made that form, it takes me there. You can turn off responses like Nick was saying right here. So if I turn that off, then no one else can answer any of these form questions, and I won't have new data going into my spreadsheet. I also, if I want to reuse this form maybe next school year and I don't want my past school year's students' data, I can delete all of the responses. If you prefer Microsoft Excel, you can also download all of the responses when you're finished gathering them as a CSV file, which you can open in Excel too if that's more your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. And
you can turn on email notifications for new responses, but because you both have hundreds of students, I don't know if you want to turn that on for someone submits it. Mm-hmm. That would be a lot of emails.
So if I click a question, they will back to form 2. Click the question.
Yes.
They're back to normal, right?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. I can edit and make some changes if I need to.
Okay.
All right. Already did all of that. Okay. So here are some of the different, little bit more advanced ways of using a Google form. So I'll kind of get your guys' opinions on this. I can show you this branching form, or we can jump ahead to setting up a form as a quiz. Whatever you would like. We might have time for both, but I want to make sure we get to the one that's more relevant to what you need at the beginning. Do you want to see how to make it into a quiz first?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
All right. So, as we kind of saw earlier, the settings in turning it onto a quiz is how you turn on the quiz. And again, locked mode on Chromebooks will only work if a student's taking the test on a Chromebook. Hopefully we can get it figured out to where that shows up as an option on everyone's computers. But to use the quiz settings, all right, I'm gonna go back to here. Can't remember if I kept that turned on or Click save. All right. So now that I turned on quiz mode on my form, this button comes up now and it didn't used to. So that's how you know you're in a quiz setting. So if I click that answer key button, this is where I can add in my feedback and what students see and how many points it's worth. So by default, mine is always set to 0. You can change that if you need to. That was in my preferences over here, where I can decide my default quiz point value. So if you know every time you add a quiz question, you want it to be 1 point, you can set that up there and you can save yourself more time every time you turn on quiz mode. I don't use that feature a ton and I haven't for a while, so that's why it was set at 0, but maybe I make this question 1 point. And then I can add a specific correct answer here and add all different variations if I need to. Or I can say mark all other answers incorrect. So if it's a specific word, like a vocabulary word, and they need to have that spelling, need to have that specific word, then I can type out my correct answer. And then anything else the students type in there will automatically be 0 points. They won't get that. Adding answer feedback is helpful. It gives students information right after they answer that question. So if they didn't get it right, say, try again, or make sure you review lesson 12.1 or something along those lines. You can even add a link as well. So if they're using this as even just like a practice test in class, or you want them to consult other resources and they get something wrong, you can add a link there to an outside website and they can go and check that out. You can even add a video as well. So maybe as students go through this test, if they get a wrong question, they're given remedial or review resources to help them move ahead. You can see what that looks like. Right. That's what students would see on that question. And I have it set to where they would see the correct answers if they got it incorrect, as well as this additional feedback. Right, so showing you the example of this on a multiple choice question. It's not as much set up for multiple choice as it is like a free response question because there's not as many answer possibilities. But I click answer key again. 1 point. Select which answer is the correct one. I can still add that answer feedback if I need to. Incorrect answers or correct answers. Save, and I click done, and that one's set up. And I would just repeat that process as I go through all of my questions.
Please, can you add the feedback again?
Yeah.
Feedback again, click that.
Add answer feedback.
Okay.
So let's have it set to where for incorrect answers, this is what they see.
Oh, okay. Then you can link some video, let them study, then choose the answer again, right?
Yep. You can even take them to maybe give them review slides that you went over in class, or to something they need to read again. And then for answers, maybe I could put something different, like.
Okay.
So it has both of those.
All right. Thank you.
And it shows me both, and I can go back and edit or delete those as I need. And then I always click answer key, and that gives me those options.
Okay.
That's pretty much the gist of setting it up as a quiz. I would suggest that if you are going to use that feature, that a really great way to see if it's looking the way you want it to is to use the preview button and practice taking the test as if you were a student, so you can see what that feedback looks like and if it's scoring it the way you want. And then it will save your answers, but you can always, again, go back and delete those answers if I need to over here in responses. I can clear out my test answers when I was pretending to be a student. And the nice thing is that after you set up a form to be in quiz mode, it does a lot of the math for you, which is great. Saved you some time. It will tell you the average for all the responses, median range, most frequently missed questions as well, and the number of correct responses. So it does some of the calculations and things for you that you might have done in a spreadsheet already right here. If I had more data, it would show all of those there. But if I wanted to go individual student results, I could too. Individual and then look. Right, so that is how you use the quiz mode on a form. And there are screenshots there for everything I just showed you if you wanted to reference those. I'm trying to think. About 10 minutes left. The other thing I can show you that is a little bit similar to setting up a form as a quiz is you can create a digital breakout room or kind of like an escape room if you've seen that trend using a Google form. And there is an example on my slide deck if you wanted to see that. Some of you might have seen this already because I think I shared it out at the end of the year and some of the other e-learning resources that were shared. But what it does is you can set up a Google form to where students have to enter in specific information. So it's kind of like a game or a competition where maybe they have to look for clues and then they have to enter the exact correct word that goes with that clue here. And if they don't, then it will give them feedback and tell them that they didn't get it right. The way I have this one set up is that after they submit all of their answers and that tells them which ones they had wrong. And the way you set this up is all through response validation, and you have to use the short answer question type to be able to do this. So I'm actually going to pull up this form so you can see how I did that. So this could be for like a review game, maybe before a test. You could have students do this and they could work in teams and give them clues around the classroom. All right. Slowly loading. My computer's probably getting mad because I have so many tabs open again. All right, so I added a picture there and then I set up this question. Here was the clue I gave my students and it's a short answer question. And then I added a description, that's what this is, it's just a little hint I typed out and I did that through this little description. But the other option you have with short answer questions is you can set up response validation so it only accepts specific answers. So I did that by clicking this 3-dot button here in response validation, and you have some options. So this specific clue was to name where all of the e-learning lessons were found, which was It's Learning. So for students to get this clue question correct, they had to type in It's Learning. So I set up response validation by clicking here, and then in this drop-down menu, I have options on how I can set up that response validation so it only accepts a certain thing. I did regular expression and matches, so it has to be exactly that text and It's Learning. And then I added a note here, so if they didn't get the question correct, this is the message that they see. Incorrect answer, try again. I got additional clues there if I want. And then I just repeated that process down this page. So another clue, it was a short answer question. This one was a number. I did regular expression again. Matches, so they had to type in exactly 052920. And if they didn't, they saw this message. So I'm actually going to preview this so you can see what it looks like. And it is linked on your screen if you want to practice doing it. I'm going to put in some wrong answers so you see what it looks like there. All right, so see, I tried to submit it and it did not let me submit the form because I had some wrong answers. So this one was right. I don't see any red text there telling me that my answer was wrong. But my answer was not right here. So I see this alert, which is that message that I typed out myself. Same one here. So it doesn't let me submit my form until I have all the correct answers. Ways that I've seen teachers use this is they've set up kind of like if you're using this in an in-person classroom, teachers have set this up to where there's clues hidden around the classroom and students go and try to find the clue. And then they enter the vocabulary word or the concept here on the digital spreadsheet, just so it's not spreadsheet, but on this digital form, it's a little bit easier for the teacher to gather the responses. Other teachers have set it up to where it's completely virtual, where maybe students watch a video and they're trying to answer a specific question based on that video. It's really just up to you and how you want to do that. They are a little time consuming to make. It takes some tinkering around, but there are some examples I can send your way if you want to get a little bit more practice with that. I could send you this one. I have a few other ones I've made, so you have a copy to kind of play around with and get your feet wet if that's something you're interested in. These are just kind of a fun, different type of lesson. They could be team-based and collaborative. I used something like this with my middle school students when I was in the classroom as a review before we had a test. And I didn't make it entirely digital. I had some clues where they had to watch a video on their device and then enter on the form. And there were other tasks as a part of this breakout where they had to go in my classroom and open a book and read a certain passage in the book. So you can kind of make it a blended experience if you want. All right, we already did that. So I'm going, since we're almost out of time, I want to make sure you guys have time to answer some more questions, or not answer, ask some more questions, and I can have time to answer them for you. There are some additional resources I linked here. Basically everything I showed you today as a written guide and video that accompanies it. And then since you guys already did that for me, you don't need to do that. But if you have more questions, my email is listed on there as well.
Okay. Can I ask a question? If
Of course.
I use the Google form, make the quiz, so I just copy this link, then post on It's Learning, and students just click the link. They don't need any code, they don't need a sign up. Okay.
No code, no sign up. Yep.
Okay. They just click a link, then they take a quiz, right?
Yep, it is that simple.
Okay, that's good.
It is, right? The less sign-ins, the better.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
We'll post this on the bingo, right? We can review and practice, follow the direction, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, bye-bye.